On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, the Toronto Raptors are not in a particularly good way right now, but can they get out of this funk by themselves, or will they need some help from our good old friend, Transactions?
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Friday, December the 12th, and I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Raptors now for 12 seasons on various platforms. You can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, link in the description of the podcast. 100% free to join as always. And of course, you can always subscribe to our Everydayer Club as well. $5 a month, $50 for the year gets you ad-free episodes of the show. If you want to go and check that out, link in the description of the podcast. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. And we're off and running here on a Friday episode of the show. Still in the middle of a bit of a break here for your Toronto Raptors. Don't play again until Monday against the Miami Heat. And it's the 12th of December, which means in 3 days' time, it is the 15th, which means it's the start of trade season in earnest, sort of. It's the much ballyhooed day that, everyone says things are going to happen on and then nothing happens. But we will set up trade season for the Toronto Raptors today. We will talk about some individual names of note, including one Anthony Davis, whose name has been in the ether this week. But first of all, we are going to talk about what's actually going on with the Toronto Raptors on the floor right now, whether they can fix this without trades. And here to do that is our dear pal, our bi-weekly Friday guest. It's Joe Wolfond. Wolf, what's up, pal?
Not too much, man. It's lots changed since the last time we checked in. Yeah. But
one day you'll come on the show and they will have gone like 4-3 or 3-4 in the past 2 weeks, but not the case yet.
I look forward to that day when we can just reheat the takes of the previous episode instead of having to completely rewire our expectations. But yeah, it's been a trying couple of weeks for the Toronto Raptors. So, let's figure out a way out of it. You and me right here.
Yeah. Like Coach Darko, fire it up. I mean, get one of your video guys probably to watch the podcast instead of you spending your hard-earned, off days doing that. But yeah, we're going to come up with the blueprint here to fix the Toronto Raptors. Is the blueprint as simple, Joe, as just getting RJ Barrett back? Is he really just that important? Like it seems crazy because he, is like probably the third or fourth best player on the team, but he clearly has had like a pretty enormous impact on the way the offense functions. And without him, they are 24th in offense overall. They are dead last in half-court offense since November the 24th, the first game he missed. Obviously, the defense has fallen off in the last couple weeks as well. They're 22nd in defense over the past 7 games. That I don't think is necessarily a reflection of missing RJ Barrett, but the bad offense maybe leads into the bad defense, and around and around we go. Is it just as simple as RJ get back and fix the team, please? Or is there stuff that they can do that they're not doing right now without RJ that they could maybe be sort of leaning into a little harder to kind of stem the tide, get them to the point where RJ Barrett gets back on the floor for them?
I mean, look, I think RJ coming back definitely helps. Like, to me, the thing that's maybe stood out most, well, there are a few things, but the thing about him being out, and then obviously IQ being out as well for their last game, that's probably, hopefully, just a one-off because it's just an illness, and you hope that he's ready to get back. And apart from that, he hasn't missed any games this year, which is fantastic because he's dealt with a lot of injuries over the last couple of seasons. Same with Ingram, right? So the fact that these guys have been healthy to this point is a great sign. I think what's concerning is that even if or when RJ gets back, you sort of have to bake in some kind of expectation of missed games for other guys.
Yeah.
And I think what would worry me is just seeing that there's kind of an aspect of specialization going on with this team where I think we can all agree that I really like RJ. I think he's been awesome since he came over. Like, reshaping his game, doing whatever's been asked of him. and has been just eminently helpful, especially at the offensive end. I mean, primarily at the offensive end, if we're being honest. But as much as I like RJ and appreciate the way that he's contributed to this team, I think we can all agree that he should not be as important as it seems like he's been, just given the way that the team has fallen off since he went out. And I think there's a lot of stuff going on, some of which doesn't have to do with him. There was like an inevitable pullback in terms of their shooting, opponent shooting, the schedule. Like, things were always bound to normalize to a certain extent. So I don't think it's like RJ comes back and they're back to winning, 65% of their games or whatever. But I do think what it's made me realize is that they're having a very hard time plugging that particular hole because of the specific things that he does that nobody else on the team can really approximate at all. And that is just be a guy who can put pressure on the rim as a driver. Yeah. Like, they've just completely lacked that element. Their half-court offense has been a lot less dynamic as a result of that, both, his sort of driving gravity and like rim pressure out of drives, but also out of cuts. Yeah. And I think things we've seen with like the late game offense, where it has become very predictable and stagnant, with a lot of sort of those mid post ISOs for Ingram that, in the early part of the season when he was drawing double teams, they were just having a lot more success playing out of that than they've had without RJ there.
The reads are just really way plainer and simpler if RJ Barrett is barreling towards the rim with, help paying attention elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. But then it's like, you think about, okay, let's say RJ comes back, but then Ingram goes down, right? It's like, okay, well, here's the one guy you have who can kind of like create a shot off of the bounce, get into the mid-range and just give you a bucket, like create something out of nothing, right? Like have some measure of pull-up gravity in the middle of the floor. What do you do without him if he's out of the lineup? If Quickly goes down, we saw this in the game against the Knicks. It's like, oh, well, there's your one movement shooter, because Grady Dick, who we were hoping was going to be that, has not been that. How does your offense function without the one guy who does that? Yeah. If Scotty were to go down, like, how is the defense going to survive without the guy who can kind of clean up all of the messes at all three levels of the floor? So I just think it's made me think about, and obviously I didn't come into the season thinking that this was in any way a perfect roster construction, but you do think about all of these different players who do these kind of specialized things where when everybody's healthy, it all kind of clicks because everybody's playing their part. And then when one part of the machine, gets taken out, it's like the whole thing breaks down. So I think that's something I'm thinking about and like worrying about a little bit. And then it's just the fact that, like, in the early part of the season, the starters weren't even succeeding that well. So thinking about like all the pieces fitting together, everybody playing their part, all that stuff, it's like, well, actually that wasn't really what was driving the team's success. Was like the transitional lineups and the bench heavy groups. But then what inevitably happens is, like, RJ goes down, everybody gets bumped up or rung in the pecking order, and now the bench unit is stretched too thin, and they're not having the kind of success that they were having early in the year. So it's had a cascading effect, and I do think him coming back will help in a lot of different ways. But also, it's like, Brandon Ingram was not going to shoot 60% on mid-range jumpers for the entire season, and I do think there's an element to which some of their movement patterns offensively have been not solved, but
scouted.
Opposing defenses have scouted that, and they're ready for it. Yeah. And it hasn't been as successful. And Ingram, I don't think, has done an especially good job of playmaking when he's drawing defensive attention. It's been, kind of hit or miss. Some games good, some games not so good. And I think the way that the late game offense has functioned in a lot of these games has been very uninspiring. So there is definitely a lot that they need to figure out, that they can do better. But I think we're definitely seeing some of the flaws with the roster construction that are, I don't think you can expect to be entirely papered over when RJ comes back, because other stuff is going to come up that they're then going to have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just like what every team deals with in a cap environment where building a team is difficult and you can only allot your resources so many places and there's only so many ways you can fill in for guys who get hurt. But I think it kind of especially comes to bear for a team that doesn't have like an inner circle top end, like top 10 guy who can kind of paper over all of those problems, right? And I think you're seeing, again, I've said this a million times on the show, but when you're a team that's the greater than the sum of your parts team, like if you don't have your parts, then it's really hard to kind of piece it all together. And I think, teams with higher end talent can kind of cover for that a little bit. So yeah, there is an element of they might be kind of fighting uphill against some of this stuff all year unless they have perfect health. And that was really their sort of secret weapon early on. Like, I think we agreed, a couple weeks ago, we were lauding the process of all they were doing on offense and defense and, really kind of believing there was staying power there. But the secret to their success really was, no one was missing time. And, it would be nice if you could kind of get one of those lucky health seasons that teams get sometimes. Maybe they're less common than they used to be. I feel like the Raptors used to get them a lot during the Kyle DeMar era. And those teams were so deep and had so many sort of layers of talent and, were able to kind of cover when a guy went down for a bit. Maybe this team doesn't quite have that ability. It's
but they have, like, that's the thing. Like I'm sure if you looked at, man games lost, they'd be one of the healthiest teams in the league.
Totally.
Scotty Barnes has played in every game. Ingram's played in every game. Quickly has missed just the one.
Yeah. It's just the one Jenga piece you pull out and it's it just kind of falls apart.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. I mean, I think they're in a bit of a lull, and even with Ingram missing, with RJ missing, like they're capable of playing better than they've played in some of these games, right?
Totally, yeah.
And like, you could say that Hornets game should have been a win. Like that Lakers game potentially should have been a win. Like they've played well enough to win some of these games and gotten, I don't know if you want to say unlucky in some of the late game situations or the execution just hasn't been there, frankly.
Yeah.
But it's like, you could point to like really a couple of games where they've just gotten their asses handed to them and they just didn't have it.
Yeah.
And I think the game against the Knicks, I almost just want to throw in the trash because, first of all, the Knicks are a really good team.
They're excellent. Yeah.
Second of all, no RJ or Quickly in that game. And again, as like I pointed this out on Twitter, but it's like you have like the one guy who puts pressure on the rim as driver, and you have the one guy who's like a movement shooting threat, and you're missing both of those guys. Like I don't think it's surprising that their offense struggled the way that it did.
Yeah.
And then you throw in the fact that Yak was like back to his early season, completely stiff as a board, couldn't move, couldn't do anything, type of compromised. And yeah, I think, and I mean, that's something you have to consider moving forward, right? Is like, which version of Yak are you going to get? Because there were a few games there where he looked a lot more limber, and you started to think that maybe he was coming out of that.
Yeah.
So to have that performance was troubling, I guess. And then that's like the one thing where I'm thinking like, man, if that is the reality for Jakob this season, where maybe he has a couple of games where he looks all right, but then he's back to just looking like the ailing, plodding dude that we've seen at other points this season, who can't really change direction, who can't get off the ground at all, then that becomes really like the biggest gaping hole, I think, on the roster. That if you want to, be serious this season, be a playoff team, try to make some noise, then that's something that definitely needs to be addressed.
Well, that lends very nicely to a pivot to trade season talk. We'll do that coming up on the other side here, Joe. Obviously, the Poeltl of it all, the backup center, the starting center, question mark. We'll get into that and sort of what we'd like to see the Raptors accomplish between now and the trade deadline a couple months from now. We'll do that in just a sec. Today's show is brought to you by ZocDoc. Look, it's important to go to the doctor. Take care of yourself. Make sure you're maintaining. And if you have something wrong with you, just go get it checked out. Get it checked out, that is. There's no more walking it off for 6 months, or no more pretending that weird shoulder stiffness is just sleeping wrong. It's time to take your health seriously, and ZocDoc makes that easier than ever, because staying healthy is more than hitting the gym and eating right. It's about actually getting things checked out when something feels off. Using ZocDoc makes scheduling easier. Search for in-network doctors and book right in the app. Real appointment times are listed, including same-day visits. No more back-and-forth phone calls or waiting weeks to be seen. Super helpful for routine checkups and those little issues you've been meaning to get checked out. Go and take care of yourself. Then 2026, it's an important thing to do, and you can do that with ZocDoc. Stop putting off your doctor's appointments and get the care you need. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA and find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA, ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNBA. Go check it out. Today's show is also brought to you by Doer, who make the good pants. I'm telling you, it's the holiday season, and you don't got to worry about what to wear to your holiday parties if you have Doer jeans, because they're great and they're versatile. You can wear them out if you're like working or you're doing some yard work or shoveling, whatever it might be, or you can wear them to your fancy little business casual affair at your office. It's a lovely compromise. They are performance jeans. They have the best of both worlds, combining jeanswear style with the kind of classic comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. They're a wonderful thing. And again, they sent me a pair. They're fantastic. I got fleece lined black taper jeans. I wear them all the time. They are delightful, and it's time for you to experience the comfort of Doer yourself. 44 Ossington Avenue in Toronto. Go to the Doer store, walk on in, and give the code LOCKEDONTORONTO at checkout, and they'll give you 15% off your first order. Or you can check them out online at duer.ca/LockedOnToronto for 15% off. That's duer.ca/LockedOnToronto. Go get yourself some pants. Back at it here with Joe Wolfond, talking about trade season. Joe, it's the most wonderful time of the year where December the 15th happens and then nothing actually happens, because that's never how this works. Even though the 15th's coming, all the deals are going to happen. It's going to be a wave of transactions, but no, these things take time because, the GMs love to sit on their hands. I don't know. It's hard to get deals across the finish line in this very cool, very fun, easy to navigate cap environment we have. Either way, December the 15th, about half the league becomes eligible to be traded. Guys signed in the summer are now able to be moved. And so you can kind of get the wheels moving on some trade talks if you'd like, if you're into that kind of thing as a front office. We've talked about Poeltl. Maybe you're of the mind that just getting a center in the door is the thing to do. I've certainly been resistant to the idea that just have to go get themselves the next Day'Ron Sharp they can get their hands on, because I'm not sure that really fixes anything as like an insurance policy for 20 missed games for Poeltl. But if he's going to miss more than that or be ineffectual for more than that, then sure, you got to look at some other options. There's some other stuff they could go and look at. Obviously, there's like the tax consideration too. Maybe that's all they do here. But Joe, starting big picture, what do you want to see out of the Toronto Raptors for the next couple of months here, keeping in mind that I don't think this was ever supposed to be a season where they were meant to contend necessarily. I think their start maybe kind of puts some more fanciful notions of what they might be capable of down the line once they get into the playoffs with this team. But maybe in sort of the interest of the long term, maybe being conservative is the way to go. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it all just yet. How do you feel about trade season as it approaches for your Toronto Raptors?
I mean, I have a really hard time seeing the big needle moving trade that's gonna, I just think this season to me is kind of about figuring out what you have and how you want to move forward. And so the idea for me coming into the year was this is going to be a season where they're going to try to win some games. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be a championship contender. I, expected them to make the playoffs, but not win a playoff round. That's kind of still where I'm at. And how much are you willing to sacrifice to potentially raise that ceiling a bit? Mm-hmm. I just, if you could upgrade on the starting center spot, I think that would be great. But the issue you run into there is, okay, so are you going to send Yak out in a trade like that? Is that the idea? Because right now, other teams are seeing the same thing we've been seeing, right? That contract presumably is underwater.
Yeah.
So if you are moving Yak to get a starting center who's better than Yak, I think the asset cost is going to be pretty steep to do that, because not only are you getting a better player, but you're also unloading what now looks like a negative value contract. So I almost think they know more than we do about Yak's health and how likely he is to come out of this, right? And if that means just shutting him down for a couple of weeks to get him right, and maybe it is a Day'Ron Sharpe that you pick up just to sort of ride that out a little bit, I actually think that's fine. Because truthfully, it's like if the other way to go is like, you mentioned before we jumped on about how badly you're pining after Ivica Zubac, right? Which, I don't think the Clippers are going to be in a rush to let him go, but if they were, I don't think they're, taking Yak back in that deal unless you're throwing a couple of picks in there, a couple of like premium picks. And if they're not, like if Yak's still on the roster, well, then now you're carrying like a $20+ million backup center.
Yeah.
It's just tough. So I don't entirely see a way out of that right now, apart from Yak just gets healthier, starts playing a lot better. Yeah. And in the meantime, it's like you feed more small ball 5 reps to Colin Murray-Boyles, who I thought looked awesome in that game against the Knicks when he, took over for Yak. And, you're going to struggle with rebounding and rim protection in some of those lineups, but you maybe make up for it in how switchable you can be. You force a lot of turnovers. And maybe your offense can become a little bit more dynamic. Although, honestly, like when their offense was really going, Yak's ability to like hit those little push shots, like be a connective playmaker and finish from the middle of the floor on the short roll, things like that was actually a big part of it. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, upgrading that spot is something that I feel like is going to be really tough to do, just given the way that their roster and their contracts are situated.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I just don't want to see them overreact to anything from the first 26 games between now and February, right? Like, I think it could be easy to do that because it's been such a season of like immense swings and extremes. And maybe you feel as though the last 7 games are, telling on the team a little bit that the 13 to 14 stretch wasn't as legitimate as it felt at the time or whatever. I trust that the front office is not going to get too trigger happy with, oh God, Poeltl looks like he's totally lost right now. It's doomed for the next 4 or 5 years. We simply have to pay up to get off of him right now. That said, you mentioned a couple picks going out the door for Zubac. I think I'd be all right with that, frankly. Like, they have all their picks to play with. Maybe throw some light protections on it. I think the Clippers are in a position where just like any picks are probably a useful thing for them. So maybe there's some sort of middle ground to be found. But if it is an immensely steep price of unprotected picks and all that, then I'm fine to just kind of hold off and say, you know what, maybe wait till the summertime to figure this thing out. Maybe we see if Poeltl plays himself out of what right now is his lowest possible value point, and then you kind of reevaluate from there. That said, if they can find a way to, get it ahead of this contract, which doesn't seem great for, a reasonable price, I think you got to look at it. But maybe that's not possible right now with how he's played. To your point, other teams have eyes, so. But yeah, as far as like the overreaction thing, like I don't want to see them just get too, I think they kind of run this risk as well with like the number of distressed assets who are out there and like good players in theory who have very real red flags and concerns. We saw them just a year ago make a trade for that kind of guy in Brandon Ingram. I worry about them maybe going and doing it again just because, that's kind of worked. Let's go do it again with a LaMelo Ball or a Trae Young or an Anthony Davis. And those are the ones I'd like to see them kind of steer clear of. I don't think they're in a position right now where they need to go and like optimize the ceiling of this roster immediately. And I think a move like that would probably kind of be in that sort of with that intent behind it. I don't know. Let's do that. We'll get to the other side here, Joe. We're going to come back and talk about some of those distressed asset guys, Anthony Davis, LaMelo Ball, Ja Morant, and whether or not, the Raptors' rumored potential interest in any of them is something we'd like to see come to fruition. We'll do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Quo, and look, it's new year, time for some new systems, and this is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of running a business and think there's got to be a better way, and there it is. Today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, and they're the smarter way to run your business communications. If you're ready to make your workday smoother and keep customers connected without the headaches, Quo makes upgrading your setup easier than ever. It's a streamlined system that makes such a big difference, that is, when communicating with your customers. You can have calls, texts, and voicemails in one clean view, keeps everything organized and helps you stay responsive. And being able to share one team number with your entire group makes it so it's way easier to keep tabs and make sure nothing gets missed. You can actually maybe take some time off in the holidays and trust that the people you work with are going to go and see the things they need to see during that time without missing customers. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedinNBA. That's QUO.com/lockedinNBA. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Go check it out. And today's show is brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. Sundays in the NFL move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That is what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver starts to get hot, a defense tightens up, an important player leaves the game with injury and shifts the tide, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with NFL games all Sunday long. You get live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, along with how the game's course is taking. Player props update as guys heat up as well, and you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked in every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Wrapping it up here with our pal, Joe Wolfond, on a Friday, as we do every other Friday here on this podcast. And trade deadline stuff. It's creeping up on us as December 15th looms, and the Raptors were in the news a little bit this week in, Shams' very special brand of English regarding the Raptors potentially being a suitor for Anthony Davis should he come to market. I don't know if there's like a certainty he's going to get traded by the Mavericks. They're looking a little bit better lately, and it's also a gigantic contract, and moving gigantic contracts in season is hard. We'll start with Anthony Davis, though. Joe, any interest from you on this one? It's a nice idea. Anthony Davis, in theory, in a vacuum, is fantastic and is a lot better than Jakob Poeltl, and it'd be one of quickly your RJ and likely a Baji that kind of make the money work going out. I think there's some real concerns about the team making very little sense after making such a trade, but the upgrade in talent, the idea of a Scotty Barnes, Anthony Davis front court seems pretty tantalizing defensively. Would that team score at all with no guard play? Probably not, but maybe you just win games 78-74. I don't know. Joe, Anthony Davis, thoughts? For me, I've made my point clear. I think this is a stay away for me. $62 million player option 2027-28 is horrifying to me. But where are you at with one Anthony Davis, potential future Toronto Raptor?
I mean, if the price is right, I think you got to consider it at least.
Sure. That applies to every possible trade, non-LaMelo Ball division, but carry on.
There's no right price for a LaMelo, is what you're saying.
No, it's the price is your soul. So,
I mean, how much is that worth, really, Sean?
Yeah, true. Honest. Yeah, we live in a hell world. It's true. Carry on.
I mean, look, I think the thing. So what you're saying, right? Let's say the salary going out is some combination of Ochai, RJ, and Yak, right? Mm-hmm. Where RJ, you're going to have to make a decision about what his next contract looks like and whether you want to be the team that pays it anyway. Mm-hmm. Jakob, as we talked about, I think it's maybe early on to be foreclosing on the possibility of him living up to that deal, but it's certainly not looking super rosy right now. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, it's like, and Ochai, is he on the team beyond this year?
Doubt it, yeah.
With the way that he's been playing. So, and then I don't know, that's not going to be enough on its own. You're probably talking about draft pick compensation in there, and that's where things start to get thorny. But if you're just thinking about the outgoing players, and the money owed to Anthony Davis, I don't know that it's necessarily worse to be committing that money to AD for like this year. Again, I think it's $58 million next year. And then, as you mentioned, the player option for 2027, 28.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it worse to be committing that to a guy in Anthony Davis who saying when he's healthy or if he's healthy is almost pointless at this point because the answer is rarely. And, I just like there is no healthy version of Anthony Davis at this point. I think you have to expect to get a guy who's going to play like 50 games a season. But I just, with the uncertainty surrounding, say, those two main guys that you'd be sending out, I don't know that it's necessarily that much worse to be rolling the dice on a guy with the kind of upside that Anthony Davis has compared to, this team, which has a reasonable floor and like a ceiling that is like a few inches above that floor.
It's a tiny home. Yeah.
It's like being John Malkovich, like the 8.5 floor or whatever, which is really just like 3 feet of space. Like that's the distance between this team's floor and ceiling. So I think that's where you come back to like, what is it you're trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like where do you see this going? Are you thinking about like operating on Brandon Ingram's timeline right now? Are you taking a bit of a longer view? Like, I personally would not be looking to send first-round picks out the door right now. I think you kind of have to be thinking about, like, adding talent through the draft and building a little bit more organically and maybe hitting your peak a few years down the road. Because I just don't know that, like, this iteration of the team with this collection of players is going to be doing anything serious in the very near future. And so unless it's like Giannis and, you can make a trade that maybe puts you in position to compete at least for like the East crown this year, next year, the year after that, I just don't know how much draft capital I'd be willing to part with in any kind of a deal like this. So that's where it would break down for me. But in terms of just like, you're going to have to face these questions sooner than later anyway. Like the RJ thing is sort of looming over this, right? Like,
yeah.
And I don't know what they're ultimately going to decide to do about that. And like whether they can come to an agreement on his value. And then, the Poeltl deal is just, I don't know, you hope that is not totally an albatross, but I think you have to consider that possibility. Mm-hmm. So that's where it would sort of be like, okay, well, you've just sort of like exchanged one question for another, but at least the other question does sometimes have an answer, which is like, this guy's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And, you figure out the pieces, I guess, around that in a way that maybe makes the roster make a bit more sense later. Like you mentioned quickly being a guy who goes out in that deal. And this gets back to talking about just the way the roster is constructed. Mm-hmm. It is constructed in such a way that Emmanuel Quickley has an importance to this team that is maybe outsized.
Yeah.
Relative to how good he actually is as a player. And I like IQ as a player, but the way the team is constructed, like he's more important than he should be because of the dearth of movement shooting elsewhere. So, if you're thinking like smaller scale, right? Like just get a guy who can make this make a little bit more sense. It's like, I'm just like going through and looking at teams that might be open to trading guys that are just totally hopeless right now. It's like, would you try to get Corey Kispert? Like somebody like that who can just do one thing really well that you actually just need to add more of to this team. Yeah. Or like a Colin Sexton if you want to get an attacking guard, like a guy who can give you a little bit more of that like dribble drive rim pressure. That's sort of more in the vein of what I'm thinking is paying like a low acquisition cost to get the kind of player who will make you less reliant on the guys we've been talking about, where it's like they're good, but you shouldn't be in a situation where they go out of the lineup and the whole thing crumbles.
Yeah, I think that is that's very well put. The AD thing, just to kind of put the bow on that, I understand the upside of like you turn one problem into a guy who, similar concern as far as health and all of that, but is a better player. I also think, though, like that deal being twice the size of what Jakob Poeltl earns Like if it doesn't work out and he is unhealthy, like I think that just becomes such an anchor on everything you're doing that like it, and the team does not, I think, become like a finals team or anything like that in that configuration. So it just doesn't feel it's quite worth the squeeze to me. Totally hear you on the not wanting to maybe sort of just do the smaller stuff to kind of address skills and needs without, sending picks out the door. That all makes perfect sense to me. Is there like a pie in the sky? Like they could just go, and like it's not going to happen probably in season. This is maybe more an off season thing, but we could talk more about the distressed asset guys. Trae Young, Ja Morant to a lesser extent. I think Trae, of those sort of do not touch guards, the Trae, LaMelo, Ja, Triforce of Pain. I think Trae is the guy I'd be most interested in. And there's sort of that like, you can kind of try before you buy thing where he's a free agent this year and maybe you get him in the door and things work out well and everyone's happy.
Sean, no. We're not doing the pre-agency thing again. Like how many times
they do it so well? They do it so well. It's their thing.
Do they?
Yeah, Brandon Ingram, Serge Ibaka, like it's they do the thing.
No, see, like this is the thing. And look, Ingram's been great, but is he overpaid relative to what he would have gotten if he just hit the open market? I think 100%. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing with Poeltl.
Sure.
So how do you end up in a situation like that? It's by trading real stuff to get these guys in their walk years and then putting yourself in a position where you are over a barrel and you just sort of have to overpay to keep them because you've given up real stuff to get them in their walk years. So I think, look, there are some benefits to that, but I just think doing the same thing over and over and over again, that's kind of how you find yourself in a situation where you're a luxury tax team that is going to be, middle of the pack. And
sure,
I don't think they should be looking to necessarily do that again. But Trae is actually interesting to me just because he would provide so much of what they're lacking in terms of off-the-dribble playmaking. Mm-hmm. And I think that you could maybe talk yourself into them having enough to sort of insulate him defensively. I'd actually be interested in seeing what that looks like, especially just because I think his value is like in the toilet right now. And if you're talking about buy low guys, mm-hmm. That's the one that I'd actually be, sort of interested in exploring.
Thanks so much for hanging out, Joe. We're going to leave it there. For those who are curious as to why we're feeling so goofy here at the end of the podcast, go check out the bonus video that will get posted to the YouTube channel over the weekend, where I throw some insane stuff at Joe that we put on the cutting room floor because it probably didn't belong in the podcast. Yeah, that's going to do it. Joe, thanks so much for being along. You got anything people should be keeping an eye out for?
Not at this time, but, stay tuned.
Yes, please do. More Raptors Republic pieces from you, please. They're great. It's great to read your stuff. Of course, you can join the Discord for our podcast, Locked On Raptors. Link in the description of the podcast. 100% free to join as always. You can also sign up for the Locked On Raptors Everydayer Club, which gets you access to ad-free versions of this show every single day, plus access to a Locked On Discord with sickos of other podcast fandoms and all of that. That's a cool thing. Nice sort of replacement for where we all used to do watching sports with friends on the internet during games. We have that now not on Twitter, so that's fun. And you can also get some bonus content, national coverage, that type of stuff through the Everyday Club as well. So please go subscribe there. It's much appreciated when you go do that. Link is also in the description of the podcast. $5 for the year, $50. Sorry, $5 for the month, $50 for the year if you want to sign on up. And we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you Monday as we look ahead to Raptors Heat Monday night. And yeah, thanks so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Ugh.